Are you struggling to be consistent in your business? Well, join me right now. Stop that scroll and let's just take a couple of minutes to talk about how you can use systems and little mini systems to help you be more consistent. Okay. All right. So let's get going. All right. So, what is a system? A system is a set of things working together as parts of a mechanism or interconnecting network, right? So I always like to think about systems, especially the mini ones when you're really down in the weeds, right? We're in the scrum shop, right? So we're doing the work. And so if you're down in the weeds and you are working on things, the little mini systems that you can create for yourself, like templates, cheat sheets, checklists. You can create checklists that you can reuse over and over and over again, especially if you're using tools like Trello and Jira. And and then things like repeatable processes and workflows. All those kinds of things can help you be more expedient when you're getting things done, but also it helps you to take the brain work out of stuff, right? Sometimes, like if you're doing like this, I do a live every single week, right? And one of the things that helps me be more consistent is that I made a commitment to do a live every single week on Wednesday. But when I started, I was doing it on Monday mornings. And what happened was I would end up so busy during the week, the prior week, that I'd end up having to work on the weekends to get my live prepared and be ready for my live, right? And so by changing it to Wednesday, it was actually a better fit for me because then I can start on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I can be kind of, working on my content. And then by Wednesday, I'm ready. And then Thursday, Friday, I can get to my other work. Not that I don't do my other work Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I do, but I like having those few days so I can put like, an hour or two in each day on that live, and then it gives me that chance to walk away a little bit, step back, think about it, those kinds of things that we do. So, building these systems is really going to help you. And so, a perfect example is my live. I have this content creation template that I created, and it helps me go through all the steps that I need to go through, like, you know, setting up my broadcast in StreamYard and then announcing it to people and sending out an email and creating the little graphic for it, and then getting it framed out, and how you kind of do an outline first and then you start writing a blog post, and usually by Wednesday I can also have a blog post done. But here's the thing, it's like you're not going to always be perfect, and so sometimes time might get away from you and you may not be able to produce that blog post right away or whatever it is that you're doing. But having that system in place, that you're going to create these things. Like, for me, I turn this live into an audio file so that I can upload it to my podcast. And then I turn the written word, into a blog post so I can stretch out that all of my content out for the entire week. But having that little system in place that walks me through the process helps me outline my work and frame it out. Then I don't have to have it perfectly done before my live. I can just have it outlined and be ready to go, right? And that's how you can utilize systems for yourself, is by creating yourself some templates, some cheat sheets, and workflows and repeatable processes. Now, the difference between a repeatable process and a workflow is a repeatable process is more like a checklist, except in that each step may have some directions, right? Or some basic information that you need, where, a checklist can be kind of a pain sometimes because you might say the things you need to do, but it doesn't really tell you how to do it, right? And so if you create a repeatable process, it's going to say, okay, step one is this, and then describe what it is and help you, with some of that information. When step two is this, that becomes a repeatable process. Where a workflow is different, because a workflow actually has decision points in it. So, for example, if you're onboarding clients, you might have different things that you onboard them for, depending on what their enrollment rate was, right? what system they signed up for. So for some, you might have a workflow that has a decision point and it says, did they sign up for, just my membership site, or did they sign up for membership plus coaching? And by either way, you're going to have a different result that happens, or a different step that happens based on that decision point. And then within each one of those steps in a workflow, you could have a small repeatable process in there, right? Or a checklist, or a template that you use, or even just a cheat sheet, right? A cheat sheet can really help. I mean, it can actually become like a desk manual for you. And so these are examples of like informal type of systems that you can create for yourself. However, as your business grows and maybe you start, farming out some of this work to them, like you create the video and then you farm it out to them to create the recording and create the, finish writing up the blog post and edit it for you and get it all framed out in your software, whatever, right? Well, then you want to have those step-by-step processes in place so that everybody works consistently. Everybody on your team knows what to do, because that's the way we work in Scrum shops. I mean, you can specialize in one thing or another, but honestly, a Scrum shop, everybody kind of knows how to do a little bit of everything, right? And so somebody who's, uploading my audio file might be able to also format my blog post, right? So we want to make sure that everybody is on the same page of how to do those things. And that's where you can start having systems like policies and procedures. And those kind of documents are really helpful, especially if you're not taking your own systems seriously. Like a perfect example of that is if you create a filing system for yourself and then you don't obey the rules that you created, or maybe you didn't even write them down, so you don't really have a good idea of what those rules are. Writing a policy and procedure document could help you a lot in terms of, one is just getting it out on paper so that you have it written down of how you want to proceed using your file management system, right? And then it will help when you have a team, because they'll understand the file management system. They'll have a document that basically explains how the file management system works, and then it'll make it easier for them to follow the rules. And that way your files, you don't have to have a full-time librarian just to keep the files straight. Everybody's going to kind of do the same thing. So anyway, that's what I'm talking about, because those kinds of things can help take all the brain work out of things and produce consistency for you. Consistency in creating, content on a regular basis. Consistency in, showing up on social media consistently. If you have policies and procedures and rules in place for yourself, and I'm not talking about strict rules or, being so hard that you feel like you're working for somebody, because, we all want to work for ourselves. That's the whole point. But creating that structure in your business will help you be more consistent, because that structure gives you that framework to lean on so that you can relax and not have to think so hard about it. It's just all there, and all you have to do is actually implement. Okay. All right. So think about the systems that you want to put in place as you move along. Start creating, little cheat sheets, even just like a little notebook like this. You could just start creating cheat sheets in there, and then you can tag them based on what they are. And then later on down the road, you can start formalizing things if you have a need for that, right? Sometimes though, you could simply take a picture of that note pick thing and then put it on the card in your Jira or Trello or whichever software that you're using, so that you have that little step-by-step procedure. That's the beauty of a Scrum shop, is you don't have to get super formal, but that doesn't mean that documentation and that kind of stuff is not necessary at all. That's not true at all, right? Documentation exists, but it only exists so that you can get the job done. It doesn't exist in and of itself just because it has to exist. But I got to tell you, having some documentation, having those kinds of things will help you, because then when you're like, for example, if you have some documentation on how you planned your website, how you worked your website, well, then you don't have to try to figure it out later on down the road. If something goes wrong, you kind of have it already documented how it works, and you can go back and look at that document, so that you can refresh your memory on how you have everything structured. Okay, so think about that is you only need to do the documentation that is really necessary, and you can make it as formal as necessary. As you build a team, you'll want to get policies, procedures, things like that being more formal, so that they understand that it's the rule and they are expected to follow it, right? Okay, so think about all of those little systems that you can build that are going to make your life easier and help you repeat the same processes over and over again, which is going to help you be more consistent. All right. Okay, guys, we'll see you in the comments.